Hi, I'm going to be explaining user and group in Redhat. We probably know what a user is. Let's say John. And a group is a group of user, let's say developers, a group of user. Now, one thing in Redhat that you have to know is anytime we create a user, Redhat also creates what we call user private group with the same name as the user. So if I create a user called John, there is a group also in etc/group with the name John in it. Now, what is that group called? It's called a user private group. Now, what's the purpose of a user private group? A user private group, okay, let me show you. So, this is a user called John, and if you go to etc, so group, so there's a user called John here, as you can see. Oh, there's a group called John here. That's what we call a user private group. Now let's create a file. Let's call it test.configuration. Touch. So as you can see here, the owner of the file is John, and the group owner of the file is also John. Why did Redhat do this? This is to prevent what we call granting permission to people unknowingly. Let's say we have a group called developers. Normally, the primary group of the user, John, is usually assigned as the group owner of the file. If the group owner of a file is developers, that means anybody added to the developers group can actually modify this very important file. In order to prevent that, and to prevent giving in advance, like to giving in permission to files unknowingly, Redhat came up with the user private group, whereby a user has a group with its own name, whereby the user is the only member of the group. Therefore, the only person that can modify the file right now is just John. Now, for someone else to be able to modify the file, what we need to do is create a group called developers, assign those users to the group, and change the group owner of this file to developers. Now, the developers have been given explicit access to the file text.configuration. That's the whole point of a user private group, to make sure we don't give unnecessary permission to people. You see? Now, let me just go through some of this. Oh yeah, the password, the shadow file. The shadow file is where, with the password file is where user information is being stored, and it's accessible to most users on the system. And as you can see, I can see the information about the user. Now, where do we store the password of the user? That's the shadow file. The shadow file can only be seen by the root, which is very important because it contains the password, the hashed password of the user. So if John tries to access the shadow file, let's see what's going to happen. Boom, permission denied. So we simply oh let me see, sorry. Okay, exit. And okay, so let's try to access it again. etc shadow. Now we can see the shadow file, which is nice. So the shadow file is to make sure we just take sensitive information and move those encrypted password away from the password file, which is accessible by most people. Now, if you want to see other user configuration, you can look into the Let's look into the etc login the depths. I think yep. You can see, you can see the password configuration. What's the minimum length of your password, age of your password, stuff like that. The minimum ID, the minimum user ID, the minimum group ID. And these are the commands that we use to modify them, to add the user, to modify the user. This is to modify the group file. If you need to remove someone from a group, if you need to do something. So let's say group password. Let's check this guy. All right. So if you need to add user, if you need to delete user from a group, that is what that's how you modify them using this command. And that's it for now. Thank you very much.